we talked about just in the break there that I kind of have difficult feelings. I thought I would have difficulty feeling sorry for people, but people in the tech industry, people, and there's kind of very much this blurring of life between what is work and what is play.
Yeah. And I specifically wanted to write about video games workers for that chapter because, like, you know, tech in general is full of sort of, you know, catering to this idea that everybody who's a good programmer is like a 20-year-old white man who wants to play with toys all day. And games are just like the logical extension of that, right? And so actually part of the reason that I'm like here in London as much as I am is I came here in February of 2019 to go meet up with the games workers who were organizing with IWGB. And then I just met a lot of people and now I just keep coming back and y'all can't get rid of me. So thanks. But yeah, so right. So the tech industry, we have this idea that it is very well paid, which in many cases it is, right? If you're a programmer, a software engineer, like you probably make pretty decent money. You can probably afford rent in London. We'll just say that. But it also has this sort of never-ending time commitments, right? And this whole setup of what the workplace is going to look like with the sort of toys and whatever, and the home cooked meals, which of course are not at home. And my favorite was the company that brands itself a Fampany, which I believe it's called Us2 Games, which is here in the UK. Yeah, I know. It's the worst portmanteau I've ever heard in my life. Because it just sounds like something else. But yeah, I was so struck because I expected the women, female gendered labor, right? I expected to hear about the family and the workplace as a family and all of that in all of those jobs. I was so surprised at how often tech workers had heard it. And how often they were told, you've joined the family, except these are also workplaces that have like mass layoffs once a year. You know, Activision Blizzard laid off like 800 people a couple of years ago and gave the CEO a raise. They just had a big walkout at Activision Blizzard. So I'm like freshly sort of on this one. So I had to do Canadian radio to talk about it a few weeks ago. Big walkout over, shockingly, sexual harassment issues, because I know you are all surprised to hear that a workplace that is built around the idea that your ideal worker is a 20-something man has a sexual harassment problem. Bless this CBC journalist who was just like, were you surprised to hear this? And I just started laughing. It was like, oh, honey. I mean, I'm kind of never surprised to hear that a workplace has a sexual harassment problem, but particularly this industry, because it is built on this ridiculous idea that like, programming is, I don't know, part of the Y chromosome. And so I start that chapter with the history of computer programming back with like the ENIAC during World War II, when programming was for girls, because like men built the hardware, because men, big tool, something, and women did the work of like moving switches around and things to program the thing. And then suddenly at some point when it becomes clear that like computers are going to kind of be important to everything, men take it over. And the women who invented the industry get sort of written out of the story. Walter Isaacson has a book about this. And so, yeah. And so again, you can sort of, by tracing the history back, you can find the place where the supposedly natural ideas about who's good at what actually get produced. And it's so interesting to see.
And it essentially comes when men realize, oh, there's money to be
made. This is
going
to be prestigious, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't realize that there was a real effort to really push women out of this industry, like to really unionize in a way and to organize in a way that made women feel they didn't belong, and to create a prestige around what was going on.
And to literally create like personality tests that said that the ideal programmer is kind of antisocial and nerdy and like Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like everybody just assumes that this is what you have to be like in order to be good at programming, which like, if you think about it, like doesn't really make any sense. There's no actual connection between those things at all. Just because Mark Zuckerberg is or I think he's a robot, but that's another story. Not provable, right about that. Not provable, but anyway. Yeah, and so you end up with this entire industry at this point built to reinforce this idea, right? And the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world just hire people that remind them of themselves. And when they get in trouble, they hire Sheryl Sandberg to like, you know, be the pretty face of it. But like, you know, mostly they just keep reproducing themselves, and they reproduce, and like sexual harassment is part of the way that they reproduce themselves, right? Because then women are driven out, and then the story is that women just can't handle it. And actually what women can't handle is, you know, being groped and having, you know, boob jokes every 5 minutes. Not that we can't handle programming a computer.
that we're stuck with technology that just doesn't work for women, doesn't account for us. Google can tell you a million ways to get home. It can't tell you the safest though, can it?
Exactly. My favorite was when Apple named the iPad, and women everywhere were just kind of like, really? You thought that was a good name? That was a good name? Really? That?
I didn't even think of that. Oh my gosh.
Was there a woman in the room? No, clearly not.